3:17 a.m. Portland, Oregon. A residential apartment complex on Southeast Division Street. 41 federal agents surrounded a third-floor unit. ATF tactical teams held the stairwells. Secret Service electronic crimes investigators monitored a live data feed from inside the apartment's network router. The target was awake. His screen was still active. He was processing a cryptocurrency transaction at that exact moment. The battering ram hit the door at 3:17 and 14 seconds. The man at the desk didn't move. He stared at his monitors as agents flooded the room. On his screen, an admin dashboard showing 8,412 completed sales across 22 countries. Beside the keyboard, a freshly printed Glock 19 frame, still warm from the 3D printer humming in the corner. This was GhostForge, the largest digital weapons trafficking platform ATF had ever encountered, and its operator had just been caught mid-transaction. The investigation that led to that apartment door had taken 11 months. It began not with a gun, but with a single Bitcoin transaction worth $347. In January 2025, the Secret Service's Electronic Crimes Task Force in Washington, D.C. was running routine blockchain analysis on dark web marketplaces. Their automated flagging system identified a cluster of cryptocurrency wallets that shared a common mixing service. The wallets were small. Individual transactions rarely exceeded $500, but the volume was unusual. Over 900 transactions in a single month, all flowing into a central receiving address. Agent Diana Cowell, a digital forensic specialist assigned to the task force, pulled the transaction logs. The pattern was consistent with a marketplace operation: small purchases, high frequency, dispersed buyer base. But the product category was unclear. The listings weren't visible on any of the monitored dark web markets. Cowell flagged the wallet cluster for deeper analysis. She submitted it to the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network for cross-referencing. The results came back in 9 days. 3 of the buyer wallets had previously been linked to firearms-related purchases on other platforms. 2 had been flagged in connection with illegal weapons parts seized by customs at the Canadian border. That was enough to open a formal investigation. The Secret Service designated it Case File EC-2025-00471. The first challenge was finding the marketplace itself. GhostForge did not operate on the standard dark web directories. It had no presence on any index.onion site. Buyers reached it through encrypted referral links distributed via private Telegram channels and signal groups. Each link was single-use, each expired after 48 hours. The operational security was significantly above average for a dark web vendor. Cowell's team spent 3 weeks infiltrating the referral network. They created undercover buyer accounts on adjacent platforms. They engaged in conversation threads about 3D-printed firearms on encrypted forums. In mid-February, an undercover account received a referral link to GhostForge. The site loaded with a clean, professional interface. No crude dark web aesthetics. The layout resembled a legitimate e-commerce platform. Categories on the left: handgun frames, rifle receivers, suppressor components, jigs and modification guides, full build packages. Each listing included a detailed product page with specifications, compatibility notes, printer settings, and customer reviews. The most popular listing was a complete Glock 19 frame file package. Price $45 in Bitcoin or Monero. It had been purchased 1,247 times. The reviews were detailed. Buyers posted about print quality, material recommendations, and firing test results. Cowell's team made their first undercover purchase on February 22, 2025. A complete Glock 19 frame file package. The download was immediate upon payment confirmation. The package contained 7 files. The frame STL file, a step-by-step assembly guide in PDF format, a rail specification document, a recommended parts list with links to legal online retailers for slides, barrels, and trigger assemblies, a troubleshooting FAQ, a print settings optimization guide for 3 popular 3D printer models, and a video tutorial narrated by an AI-generated voice. The quality was professional. This was not a hobbyist sharing files. This was a commercial operation with production values. ATF was brought into the investigation on March 3, 2025. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives had been tracking the 3D-printed firearms space for years. But GhostForge represented something new. Previous cases involved individuals sharing files freely or selling them on general-purpose dark web markets. GhostForge was a dedicated, purpose-built platform with a business model. A TF Special Agent Marcus Reeves was assigned as lead case agent. His first step was to assess the threat level of the files being sold. ATF's firearms technology branch in Martinsburg, West Virginia, received copies of every file available on GhostForge. Technicians printed each design using consumer-grade 3D printers, the same models recommended on the platform. The results were alarming. Of the 34 unique firearm designs available on GhostForge, 29 produced functional weapons. The Glock 19 frame printed cleanly on a $300 printer using PLA Plus filament. When assembled with commercially available parts, it fired without failure. ATF technicians put 500 rounds through the test weapon. It held. The rifle receiver designs were equally functional. An AR-15 lower receiver printed in reinforced nylon withstood sustained semi-automatic fire. ATF's testing report noted that the design included structural reinforcements not present in earlier open-source designs. Someone with engineering expertise had refined these files, but the most concerning category was the modification guides. GhostForge sold detailed instructions for converting semi-automatic weapons into fully automatic ones. The guides included printable jig files, physical templates that, when attached to a firearm, guided the drilling and milling required for the conversion. The jigs cost $25 each. They had been purchased over 600 times. If you're watching this and finding it valuable, hit the like button. It takes 1 second, and it helps this content reach more people. ATF now had confirmed that GhostForge was distributing functional weapon blueprints at commercial scale. The next priority was identifying the operator. The Secret Service's blockchain analysis had traced payments to a central cluster of wallets, but the wallets used a sophisticated mixing service that fragmented and recombined transactions through hundreds of intermediate addresses. Standard chain analysis could not penetrate it. Agent Cowell took a different approach. Instead of following the money forward to the operator, she followed it backward from the buyers. The undercover purchase had been made using a controlled Bitcoin wallet. Cowell analyzed the transaction's path through the mixing service, tracking timing patterns rather than wallet addresses. Cryptocurrency mixing services batch transactions at regular intervals. By correlating the exact timing of deposits and withdrawals across the mixer, Cowell could identify which output transactions corresponded to which inputs. It was painstaking work. Each transaction required cross-referencing against thousands of concurrent mixer outputs, but the timing analysis produced results. In April 2025, Cowell identified an output wallet that had received funds from GhostForge customer payments and then transferred a portion to a cryptocurrency exchange based in Singapore. The exchange complied with a mutual legal assistance request. The account was registered to a VPN-masked IP address, but the account holder had made one error during registration 18 months earlier. They had briefly connected without a VPN. The exposed IP address resolved to Portland State University's campus network. This was the break. A single unmasked connection lasting less than 2 minutes logged on a Singapore exchange server in October 2023. Reeves deployed an ATF surveillance team to Portland. The university's IT department, operating under a federal court order, provided network logs that narrowed the connection to a specific campus building. But the building housed a public computer lab used by hundreds of students and faculty. The IP address alone wasn't enough for identification. The surveillance operation shifted to the physical. ATF agents monitored the computer lab for 3 weeks in May 2025. They logged every individual who used the terminals. They cross-referenced the lab's access logs with the timestamps of GhostForge administrative activity, which Cowell's team had been tracking through server response patterns. One name appeared repeatedly during active admin windows: Daniel Whitford, 29 years old, master's degree in mechanical engineering from Portland State, completed in 2023, currently unemployed. Residential address: an apartment on Southeast Division Street, less than a mile from campus. Reeves pulled Whitford's background. No criminal record, no prior law enforcement contact. His academic records showed a thesis focused on additive manufacturing tolerances in high-stress polymer applications. In plain terms, he had studied how to make 3D-printed parts stronger under pressure, the kind of pressure generated by a firearm's action cycling. The connection between the thesis and the GhostForge product line was not coincidental. ATF obtained a federal surveillance warrant for Whitford's apartment and digital communications in June 2025. The technical surveillance unit installed monitoring equipment on the building's internet junction box. All traffic from Whitford's apartment was mirrored to an ATF collection server. Within 72 hours, the data confirmed the connection. Whitford's home network was communicating directly with GhostForge's server infrastructure through a layered VPN chain, but the encryption had gaps. Maintenance commands sent to update the marketplace's product listings originated from his apartment's IP address. The commands contained administrative credentials that matched the marketplace's back-end structure. Whitford was GhostForge's sole operator. He built the platform, designed or refined the weapon files, managed customer support through encrypted messaging, and processed every transaction personally. The financial picture came into focus through the surveillance data. Over 18 months of operation, GhostForge had processed approximately $2.8 million in cryptocurrency revenue. Whitford's personal spending was modest: rent, groceries, basic utilities. He converted small amounts of cryptocurrency to cash through a series of peer-to-peer exchanges, never more than $2,000 at a time. The bulk of the revenue remained in cryptocurrency wallets distributed across multiple blockchains. But Whitford was not a lone actor in the distribution chain. GhostForge operated on a vendor model. While Whitford designed and sold the primary firearm files, the platform also hosted third-party sellers. These vendors offered complementary products: custom grips, magazine extensions, trigger group modifications, and specialized print profiles optimized for different printer brands. Whitford collected a 15% commission on all third-party sales. ATF identified 14 active vendors on the platform. Their identities were obscured behind encrypted handles and cryptocurrency-only transactions. Unmasking them required a separate track of investigation. Reeves requested assistance from the FBI's Cyber Division and the Department of Homeland Security's Homeland Security Investigations Unit. The multi-agency task force, now designated Operation Printlock, expanded to 60 investigators across 9 field offices. The vendor investigation used a combination of undercover purchases, blockchain analysis, and traditional law enforcement techniques. Undercover agents posing as buyers engaged vendors in extended conversations about products, asking technical questions designed to elicit identifying details. One vendor mentioned shipping physical jig kits from a specific region. Another referenced a local makerspace where they tested prints. Over the summer of 2025, the task force identified 11 of the 14 vendors. They were scattered across 9 states: Oregon, Washington, California, Texas, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. Their profiles varied. Some were hobbyist makers who had found a profitable side business. Others were more ideologically motivated, active in online communities that opposed federal firearms regulations. The buyer side of the operation was even more dispersed. GhostForge's transaction records obtained through the surveillance of Whitford's server communications showed 8,412 completed sales to buyers in 22 countries. The largest buyer concentrations were in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Australia, all countries with strict regulations on firearms manufacturing. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next investigation. We cover the most significant federal operations as they unfold. In September 2025, the task force identified a critical escalation. A GhostForge customer in Phoenix, Arizona, had purchased multiple modification jig files and was actively advertising converted fully automatic weapons for sale on a separate dark web firearms market. The buyer, identified as Ryan Coulter, 34, was selling converted weapons for $3,000 to $5,000 each. ATF's Phoenix field office confirmed that at least 4 converted weapons had already been sold and were unaccounted for. Coulter's operation represented the exact threat that made GhostForge dangerous at scale. The platform's products were not remaining as digital files. They were being manufactured, modified, and redistributed as physical weapons through secondary markets. Each file purchased from GhostForge could produce unlimited copies. The 8,412 sales did not represent 8,412 weapons. They represented unlimited manufacturing potential. The task force made the decision to accelerate the takedown. Originally planned for early 2026, the timeline moved forward to December 2025. The Coulter discovery demonstrated that delaying the operation increased the risk of violence. Every additional day of GhostForge's operation meant more files in circulation, more weapons being manufactured, and more converted automatic weapons entering unregulated markets. Reeves coordinated the operational plan through ATF's Special Operations Division. The takedown would be simultaneous. 23 search warrants executed across 9 states within the same 90-minute window. The timing was critical. Any leak or premature alert could allow targets to destroy evidence, move cryptocurrency, or flee. The warrants were approved by federal magistrate judges in 7 judicial districts during the first week of December 2025. Each warrant application included evidence specific to the individual target, compiled from months of surveillance, undercover transactions, and blockchain analysis. The operational date was set for December 14, 2025. A TF staged tactical teams in each target city during the 2 days prior. Agents traveled undercover assignments to avoid detection. In Portland, the primary team consisted of 41 agents from ATF Secret Service and the U.S. Marshal Service. Whitford's apartment was the priority target. His computers contained the platform's complete transaction history, vendor records, buyer database, and the master copies of every weapon file. The pre-raid surveillance on December 13th confirmed Whitford's routine. He rarely left the apartment before noon. He was typically active on the platform between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. The raid was timed for 3:15 a.m. when he would be awake and at his computer, maximizing the chance of seizing the systems in an unlocked active state. At 2:45 a.m. on December 14, 2025, the tactical teams moved into position. The apartment complex was a 3-story wood frame building with 12 units. Whitford occupied Unit 3C, a corner apartment with windows facing south and east. A TF positioned agents at both stairwell exits and on the roof. A technical surveillance team monitored Whitford's network traffic in real time from a van parked across the street. At 3:12 a.m., the technical team confirmed Whitford was logged into the GhostForge admin panel. His most recent action was approving a new vendor listing for a suppressor baffle file. 3 3D printers in the apartment were running active print jobs. At 3:15 a.m., the entry team stacked on the 3rd floor corridor. 2 agents carried a battering ram. 4 agents with ballistic shields held the forward position. The remaining team members held rear security and covered adjacent apartment doors. The breach happened at 3:17 a.m. One strike. The door frame splintered. Agents entered the apartment in a standard 4-person room clearing formation. The main room was a combined living space and workshop. 3 3D printers were arranged on a folding table against the east wall. 2 desktop computers sat on a corner desk. Whitford was seated in a rolling chair at the desk. He did not resist. Agents secured Whitford within 11 seconds of entry. A digital forensics specialist immediately accessed both computers, which were unlocked and displaying the GhostForge admin dashboard and a cryptocurrency wallet interface. The specialist initiated a forensic imaging protocol, copying the contents of both hard drives and 4 external storage devices found in the desk drawer. On the folding table beside the printers, agents found the following: 47 completed 3D printed firearm components in various stages of finishing, including 12 Glock pattern frames, 8 AR-15 lower receivers, 6 suppressor baffles, and assorted trigger housings and magazine components. 3 complete firearms, fully assembled from printed and purchased parts. 14 spools of printing filament, including PLA+, nylon, and carbon fiber reinforced polymer. A set of hand tools for post-printing finishing, files, sandpaper, a Dremel rotary tool, drill bits. In a bedroom closet, agents found a fireproof safe containing a hardware wallet, a physical device storing cryptocurrency private keys, and a notebook with handwritten wallet addresses and access codes. Whitford was read his Miranda rights at 3:24 a.m. He invoked his right to counsel and did not make any statements. The simultaneous raids across 8 other states began within the same window. In Phoenix, ATF agents executed the warrant on Ryan Coulter's residence at 3:20 a.m. Mountain Time. The entry team found Coulter in a garage workshop with 2 3D printers running and a bench covered in weapon components. Agents seized 23 printed firearm frames, 7 modification jigs, 3 completed converted automatic weapons, and over 2,000 rounds of ammunition. Coulter's phone contained encrypted communications with 19 buyers and delivery records for 11 completed weapons already sold. In Houston, Texas, agents raided the residence of a GhostForge vendor identified by the handle Tex Machina. The vendor, identified as Craig Beller, 42, operated 3 high-end industrial 3D printers in a rented storage unit adjacent to his home. Beller's operation was more sophisticated than Coulter's. He had been producing weapon components in bulk and selling finished kits through a separate distribution network. Agents seized 89 printed components, 6 assembled weapons, and a customer ledger tracking 47 completed sales. In Detroit, Michigan, a vendor operating under the name Lake Effect was arrested at a co-working maker space where he had been using shared industrial printers to produce weapon files he'd purchased from GhostForge. Agents seized the printers and 31 printed components from a locked cabinet at the facility. The raids in California, Washington, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Virginia produced additional seizures. In total, across all 23 search warrants, federal agents recovered the following: 340 3D-printed weapon components, 14 3D printers that had been actively producing firearm parts, 22 fully assembled weapons manufactured from printed components, 4 fully automatic converted weapons, over 12,000 rounds of ammunition, $1.1 million in cryptocurrency seized from hardware wallets and exchange accounts, and digital evidence including transaction records, customer databases, and encrypted communications. The digital evidence from Whitford's computers provided the most comprehensive picture of GhostForge's operation. His admin records showed the platform's full history. It launched in June 2024. By August 2024, it had processed its first 100 sales. Revenue grew steadily: $18,000 in the first quarter, $127,000 in the second quarter, $340,000 in the third quarter, and $680,000 in the fourth quarter of 2024. By the time of the takedown, cumulative revenue had reached approximately $2.8 million. The buyer database contained 3,217 unique accounts. Not all accounts had completed purchases. Some were registered, but inactive. Of the active buyers, 68% were based in the United States. The remaining 32% were distributed across 21 other countries. The transaction records included buyer wallet addresses, purchase dates, and download confirmations, but not real names or physical addresses. Buyers were identified only by their cryptocurrency wallets and encrypted usernames. ATF's International Liaison Office notified law enforcement agencies in the 21 foreign countries where buyers had been identified. Europol coordinated the European response. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police opened investigations into 47 Canadian buyer accounts. Australian Federal Police identified 23 accounts linked to Australian IP addresses. The domestic buyer investigation was more complex. ATF had the resources to pursue only the most prolific and dangerous buyers. Analysts ranked the 2,184 US-based buyer accounts by purchase volume and product category. Buyers who had purchased modification jig files, the tools for converting semi-automatic weapons to fully automatic, were flagged as the highest priority. There were 614 such purchases. Of those 614, ATF had the resources to investigate approximately 200 in the immediate term. The remainder were cataloged for future investigation. Those files remained in the hands of buyers whose identities were unknown. The charging decisions were made by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Oregon, which took the lead due to Whitford's residence. Whitford was charged with conspiracy to manufacture and distribute firearms without a federal license, conspiracy to distribute firearms trafficking information, money laundering, and operating an unlicensed firearms manufacturing business. The indictment carried a maximum combined sentence of 45 years. 22 additional defendants were charged in related indictments across 7 federal districts. The charges varied based on individual conduct. Vendors who had manufactured and sold completed weapons faced the most serious counts. Buyers who had purchased modification guides and used them to convert weapons faced both federal firearms charges and, in several cases, state-level charges related to weapons found in their possession. Coulter in Phoenix was charged with manufacturing and distributing unregistered firearms, possession of unregistered automatic weapons, and conspiracy. His case was particularly significant because ATF could trace several of his converted automatic weapons to subsequent possessors, though not all had been recovered. 4 weapons sold by Coulter remained unaccounted for at the time of indictment. Beller in Houston was charged with unlicensed firearms manufacturing, distribution, and money laundering. His customer ledger allowed ATF to identify 31 of his 47 buyers. The remaining 16 had used encrypted communication channels that Beller had since deleted. If this case makes you think about the future of digital weapons trafficking, leave a comment below. These investigations are happening right now. The legal proceedings move forward through early 2026. Whitford retained a criminal defense attorney specializing in digital rights cases. His defense was expected to challenge the scope of federal firearms statutes as applied to digital files, arguing that distributing a CAD file is protected speech under the First Amendment and does not constitute manufacturing or distributing a firearm. This legal argument was not new. It had been raised in previous cases involving 3D-printed firearm files, most notably in the defense-distributed litigation. that began in 2013 and continued through multiple courts. But GhostForge presented a different factual scenario. Whitford was not distributing files freely as a political statement. He was selling them commercially, providing detailed manufacturing instructions, offering customer support, and hosting a marketplace where vendors sold physical modification tools. The commercial nature of the operation made the First Amendment defense significantly more difficult to sustain. Whitford's bail hearing took place on December 19, 2025. The government argued for detention, citing the severity of the charges, the international scope of the operation, and Whitford's access to approximately $1.7 million in cryptocurrency that had not been seized. The magistrate judge agreed. Whitford was held without bail pending trial. By February 2026, 7 of the 22 co-defendants had entered guilty pleas. The plea agreements included cooperation provisions requiring them to provide information about other buyers and sellers in the GhostForge network. The cooperation produced actionable intelligence. ATF identified an additional 34 buyers who had manufactured weapons from GhostForge files, leading to a second wave of search warrants executed in March 2026 across 6 states. The March warrants resulted in the seizure of an additional 78 printed weapon components and 9 assembled firearms. 3 of the newly identified buyers were convicted felons who were legally prohibited from possessing firearms. Their purchases from GhostForge had allowed them to bypass the background check system entirely. The weapons they manufactured carried no serial numbers. They were untraceable. ATF's acting director held a press conference on January 8, 2026, calling Operation Print Lock the largest digital weapons trafficking case in the agency's history. The numbers supported the claim: $2.8 million in revenue, 8,412 sales, 22 countries, 23 defendants, and over 400 seized weapon components across multiple raid waves. But the numbers also illustrated the limits of the operation. The 8,412 sales represented files that were now permanently in the hands of buyers worldwide. Digital files can be copied infinitely. They can be shared, redistributed, uploaded to new platforms, or stored on encrypted drives indefinitely. Seizing the marketplace did not recall the files already downloaded. Every buyer who had ever purchased from GhostForge retained the ability to manufacture weapons from those files at any time. ATF's technology division estimated that the 34 unique firearm designs sold on GhostForge had the theoretical potential to produce tens of thousands of weapons. The actual number that had been manufactured was unknown and likely unknowable. ATF had confirmed approximately 450 printed components and 35 assembled weapons through the investigation. But these numbers reflected only what agents had physically seized. The true manufacturing output of GhostForge's customer base was a figure the investigation could not determine. The international dimension added another layer of uncertainty. Of the 21 countries where buyers were identified, only 9 had initiated responsive investigations by March 2026. The remaining 12 had either not responded to notification or lacked the technical capacity to trace cryptocurrency-based buyer accounts. Weapons manufactured from GhostForge files in those countries were entirely outside the reach of U.S. law enforcement. Within the United States, the investigation had identified a systemic vulnerability. The federal firearms regulatory framework was designed around physical objects, metal and polymer weapons manufactured in factories, sold through licensed dealers, tracked by serial numbers. GhostForge existed entirely outside that framework. Its products were data. Its manufacturing occurred in private residences using consumer equipment. Its distribution channel was encrypted and borderless. ATF's regulatory tools were not designed for this threat model. A licensed firearms manufacturer must maintain records, serialize products, and comply with federal inspection. A person with a $300 printer and a GhostForge file had none of those obligations. The regulatory gap was structural, and Operation Print Lock did not close it. Whitford's trial was scheduled for June 2026. The case was expected to test the boundaries of federal firearms law as applied to digital manufacturing. The GhostForge marketplace went dark at 3:17 a.m. on December 14, 2025. Its servers were seized. Its operator was in federal custody. 22 co-defendants faced charges across 7 districts, but the 8,412 files that had been sold remained downloaded, copied, stored on hard drives, and encrypted clouds across 22 countries. The platform was gone. The files were permanent. 2 of the 4 automatic weapons sold by Coulter in Phoenix were recovered. 2 were not. TF's Phoenix field office continued to track them. As of March 2026, their location was unknown. 16 of Beller's Houston customers were never identified. The records that could have identified them had been deleted before the raid. And within 3 weeks of GhostForge's takedown, ATF's dark web monitoring unit identified 2 new marketplaces offering 3D-printed firearm files. One of them was advertising designs originally sold on GhostForge. The files had been repackaged and relisted at lower prices. The marketplace was dismantled. The market it served was not.